D&D panel.
Yeah.
Yes. I am your dungeon master, George.
I am Brian. I play Tonsil Inhaler.
I'm Jacob. I play Adelhard.
I'm Mac. I play Zoodlemac.
And
I'm still on tonsil swallower.
and typically we are a podcast, but fortunately for you today, we will be in person, not doing a little bit, but rather we're going to be explaining a little bit about D&D and how to better yourselves both as a player and as a leader. But first, if you've ever listened to our podcast, which I know each and every one of you have not yet, one of the things we like to do to really get ourselves into the mood, we like to join hands with the person on either side of us as we... Trevor, please, if you would like to join hands, you may. If you'd like to hold your own hands, that's all right. You can just put them at your side, put them in your pockets, whatever you want.
You're right, join it right.
Hurry up!
Come on, join in hands.
Join hands with someone.
Join hands with someone.
Because, ladies and gentlemen, why don't we play D&D? One of my favorite things to do. We got to have fun here. We like to enter the realm of fantasy, so listen to my voice, close your eyes, grab the hand of the person next to you, and feel yourself being whisked away into a land of fantasy. Wow! I think we all made a new friend today. We have fun here at Wyvern Watch. All right, so let's get right into the thick of things. To start with, hello.
Hi.
Hello. You're already in the realm of fantasy, but that's all right. You're in there. I'm just going to establish, we have some dice here to give away. So if you guys at any point have a question, what I'm saying, what somebody else is saying, or something completely tangential, you can raise your hand, ask a question, and then if it is a good question, you can come up and get a free die.
Yeah, right.
So,
Yeah.
we already got some hands. I'm going to start with
No.
the person who just walked in.
Whatever.
What's the most difficult thing about DMing?
DMing, well that's going to be for me. I am the DM for these guys. I've been DMing for quite some time. Basically, I'm the only one that learned to DM out of all of them. I'd say the most...
I've DM'd before.
Once.
I'm learning by proxy.
One of the most difficult things is learning to kind of roll with your players' punches. It's not so much like you think of in a business, it's a boss and employees. It shouldn't be a different level. You should be on the same level. You create kind of a pathway for your players to follow. But if they don't want to follow that, that's okay. Your goal as a DM is not to follow like the rules step by step, but rather to make sure your players and you have a good time, however many times you play, and they want to come back. And that's always been paramount when I've tried to DM. I was going to get into that real quick. Let's start with actually, who knows what Dungeons & Dragons is?
Who doesn't?
All right. So, what do you think? We're going to be talking to you here. Dungeons & Dragons is a fantasy role-playing game where decisions are made by players, but fate is decided by the dice. There are several editions. The most updated one is 5th ed. We have adopted and stuck with 2nd edition from back in, I suppose, 1990-something. I don't know. It's what I learned. It's what I got. But I play a very, very bastardized version of it because, again, my paramount thing, I want players to enjoy playing and I want them to want to come back. So, of course, if things are a little like sketchy on the rules, it's all right. I take some things from 5th edition. If you know 5th edition, you know the inspiration points. That's a feature I really enjoy. So I've adopted that. I've picked and chose several things out of different editions. I'm sorry. You get a die.
Yeah. I've been thinking about it this entire time.
You can come up here and choose one.
Yeah, just come on up. Or, yeah.
Round of applause. All right. But for you, I hope that's a little educational. What Dungeons & Dragons is. Hello.
Hi. Goodbye.
She got it.
We're still in the same age now.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
And welcome to Wyvern
Watch.
Do your sign. I'm ready for some more audience members. I'll be back.
All right, man. Thanks. We got a question over here.
So I'm actually about to start my own campaign.
Awesome.
My first time DMing.
Brilliant.
I don't know. I've got so many ideas for the story that I want to throw in there. But as far as tying them up, I can make something up. But how do I get it all started with the players?
Started
Trying to
with
figure out
the
how to get them started into this campaign. Everyone's played D&D.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my first time DM.
So you're thinking like you've got the idea of what you want for your camp, but how to like kickstart it, right?
Yeah, like how do I get them all
How
together?
to get them involved.
You guys are all here.
And do you know your players like pretty well?
Yeah, they're all good friends.
What you gonna think? What do they like? Because again, I ask with these guys every time. Our campaign, I'll say, we've been keeping on this for at least half a year now. But we do we have this book, which is Ozkey's Magical Journal, and every campaign they do is to get the next page of the journal, and that keeps them going. So I have to keep kickstarting with every page. But I know these guys. I know what they like. They're more of just, they enjoy the opportunity to start role-playing. So, for example, the last campaign they did, they had to retrieve a page that was made into a paper hat on top of what were they? Kobolds. So I constructed this big trapped tower full of kobolds, and the top one had a big old hat that was made of one of Ozkey's Journal's pages. And so I had them go into the town, and I think they talked to some officials, and they found out, they started to sympathize. They saw this town was being plagued by these kobolds nearby, and it kind of gave them the initiative to go and start sieging. So I'd say to get the players started interested, find out what they like, find out something to give their emotional interest in it, and then go from there. Jacob has something.
I said hi.
Oh, you said hi. I'm sorry.
Welcome to Wyvern.
Does that help you?
Kind of. I was really looking for like you have ideas for when the campaign first starts, right? You give your setting, right? You start in a town. How have you put your players together? Do you just go, and you're all drinking at a bar,
So,
instead of your best friends, or?
Yeah, this is something I'm like running a little thing on the side with some of my friends that are all doing D&D. But the main thing that you want to do is you want you want to be with the player characters while they're creating their characters. Because if you have relationships already set up between the characters, even if it's just like one of these characters, one knows the other one, and that one knows the other one, and that one knows the other one, then you have like a reason for them to all be together. So if there's some sort of like either that or some sort of common goal that they need to work towards,
So
like a short-term sort of thing.
So instead of it having because I have 7 players who are going to be doing this, instead of it being 7 individual reasons to try and come by, but like you, it's like
Yeah, so you have like
3 or
a
4.
group of 2, a group of 3, and a group of 2, and like they have to come together for some reason. It makes it easier.
So to elaborate on that, with the Ozkey's Journal, when they first opened the book, it started this long journey. It created like a shift in forces. I had one of my players, Mac, there. He was the librarian who owned the journal's assistant, and then his friend was this guy, though they were, a difficult friendship. And then the middleman here, Adelhard, he just was an outsider. He was
I think I'm a cleric.
a cleric, but he sensed this sudden burst of energy and wanted like burst of evil energy and went towards it to start fighting it.
Oh, okay.
I guess the idea is to work with the players on what their character is or their motivations, and then try and kind of tailor the plot around it to have them kind of make like some kind of movie.
Find a motivation that motivates all of the players.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you. That helps a lot, actually. Oh, nice.
All right. We got some back there.
Thank you.
How do you make a proper character?
A proper character.
Proper character.
Proper character. Well, depends on what you consider proper.
Yeah, there's no real way to make a proper character. You just want to kind of make a character that's fun with you, kind of what you would want to play as. Because
Machine gun movement? Zach? No.
That's all right. I mean,
Come on in.
hello.
I just
so-
want to know if there's any certain rules we need to follow when making a character.
It may vary by edition you play. Of course, talk to your DM, see what he's okay with. I'm very easygoing, or she, I'm sorry, but they're okay with it. Basically, you want to work with them. Character creation is not an isolated thing that a player would do, nor is it something that DM should do on their own. You guys are playing together for however many hours, so you should work on your character, make sure it's okay with both parties. Whatever you'd like. Yeah.
middle row, green shirt.
You want to die?
If you want, you can come get a die, because I don't want to throw it that far.
You're gonna hurt someone.
Yeah.
Alright. Who are you calling on?
Middle row, green shirt.
How would you suggest finding, say you wanted to start a campaign or during a campaign, finding players in your area?
There are many
Is there like any like meetups or like sites in general or something?
I know you can Google, Dungeons and Dragons or a gaming meetup in your area. I know there's a couple game stores near me that they have weekly D&D groups, and they're usually pretty inviting. Alternatively, Facebook. I mean, the internet's at your mercy at that point. All right,
If you would like a dice, you may come up.
all right. I saw you back there with the magnificent beard.
Unless you would want a different
So
one.
like you asked, like everyone kind of knows what D&D is. It's got like a huge, I guess, cultural influence. But that kind of, it makes it harder to introduce like new people because they usually like they're scared of the game because like it's so big. So like how do you approach those people? Like I know it's like a pretty sensitive time, like where you just want to first, you don't want to like, you don't want to grow too
overwhelm.
much.
I know character
So,
generation is
like what advice do you have to like adopting people to our culture?
definitely. I believe I'm trying to think of the most recent person here I played with. Cooper, you probably.
Yeah, I'm probably the newest.
I think I just threw you into the deep end.
I mean,
right?
well, the thing was that when you first started my first campaign, I was doing it with two of my other friends who were also brand new, so having other new people always helps. But I'd say just trying to get them to be excited for what you're going to be doing, just the idea that you can do anything in this realm of fantasy, that really is what latched me onto the game.
Yeah, it's
And
like,
that's what really, it's just that excitement for what you can do.
yeah, I was gonna say, like, you want to talk to your players about like how D&D works conceptually first, so like the ideas of it, and then you can ease them into the mechanics.
As they happen.
Yeah.
Also, you wanted to just like forego it, just almost like on like movement or something. All the complicated stuff that you don't need to start with, and you'd only do if you get.
That's in my
Wyvern,
bastardized
not
second
fruition.
edition. I don't do movement. I don't do encumbrance because it's kind of just. I understand fourth edition's big on movement, fifth edition aces, but I find it for second it's a lot more of an encumbrance than it is an addition.
I just got two of my friends to actually start playing D&D with me in our campaign where her dad is DMing. And I basically just walked up to my friend who I was just like, hey, like you're really good at smooth talking away out of everything. You should be a bard. And he's like, okay.
All right.
And then he came into the campaign. He was like, now I'm gonna be a barbarian dwarf. That's completely different.
You latch them on. That's what you do. You identify with their like and you capitalize them. I saw you for a while, so.
So we have a newcomer into our game. He's 14 years old. Everyone else is our age. He listened to one of our games because we do it all online, and he seemed very respectful when we introduced our characters. There was a lot of, yeah, I already read your character sheet, which, like he's doing his research and everything, but I want to make sure he's included because we have a couple of really big personalities.
Is he going to be like starting to play, or is he just?
He's starting to play. He's going to be starting off at 7th level. We are playing 5th edition.
Okay.
But I also want to make sure that he doesn't kind of get lost and
Lost among the big
yeah. So there's going to be 7 of us now.
Okay.
Are
Yeah.
you the DM?
No, I am not.
Well, I would say just like mention to the DM, like make sure to have the DM ask him.
It's
like,
actually the DM's nephew, which makes things even more complicated.
I mean, yeah. So yeah, you definitely like if you're getting a new player in a group that's been going on, you definitely want the DM to reach out to them and like make sure that they're feeling welcome and they're feeling like they're getting their chance to talk.
And I mean, again, the foremost and everything is communication. Talk to your DM, make sure they know, express your concerns, talk to the players, and that's a strict like social. Make sure you know expectations before going into things, and make sure they know what you would like and what they would like, so no one's let down. And I feel like.
Thank you.
I saw you just immediately.
When you're planning things in advance, how do you sort of account for the fact that players are never going to do exactly what you plan? But at the same time, you don't want to railroad them.
Right.
That's not fun.
That's the cardinal sin of DMing is railroading.
So like, how do you find the balance to be like, okay, I want them to have this experience, I want them to build up to this encounter at the end.
Right.
But
So
Sure.
I've heard a really good tip about this, and so usually when you're planning as a DM, you kind of think of stuff and like ideas of like, oh well, there's going to be a castle here, and there's going to be a guy inside that castle. But something I heard was instead of thinking of it like that, think of it like a node, like there's going to be a structure. So it might be a castle, but if your players decide, oh, we want to go sail into the sea, instead it'll be like an island. And so you have like the same archetype of where, like there's a place here, and there'll be a person doing a thing. and like you have like those kind of ideas, but you can tailor the flavor of it depending on where your players want to go.
So like always have the same idea for the area of where you want them to go, and then just like, oh, instead of taking a left, you went a right. It's still there.
It's still there, yeah, exactly.
It wasn't in the mountains, it was in the sea. It's
Yes.
like, surprise.
Just have the general idea, and a lot of DMing for me at least has been a lot of improv. So you have the idea of what you want, but then anything else is you're responding to what the players want to do and how they want to perform. Another thing you can do is if you have like this thing needs to be a castle, you can create that whole module and then set it aside, and for whenever they go to a castle, that's where they go, or a room that you create, or an NPC that you have ready to go. Whenever it calls for those things, you already have them ready for the players to experiment with. Yes. All right, you've been holding your hand up.
What do you do as a player if you have a DM that you feel is unfair to you? Like occasionally I'll just go to a bar of the game and 6 or 7 people just attack me for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah, that's I mean, it sounds like he's got a vendetta against you. That's just a bad DM.
I have to talk to him.
So again,
Your
yeah.
personal issue, I can't.
I'm assuming you're not going in there like starting punching people or doing anything. You're just looking for a drink. Talk to him, ask if you've done something to offend the man earlier. But if there's not a legitimate story reason, not a character reason, if you haven't done anything for that to happen, you need to talk to the DM and ask him what's up. Again, communication. And I already said you could really.
Okay, so
You can get a die if you'd like.
yeah.
I'm just basically gonna roll it down.
Put a roll on.
I'm terrible.
What's up?
Are boneless wings and chicken nuggets the same thing?
No.
That's all.
Boneless wings are wings that were created and then bones removed. Chicken nuggets were a pulp that were formed into a nugget shape.
That's a very valid question. Just don't ask it.
So I've been DMing for I think 3 years now.
Nice.
However, I've recently started upon a party of new players.
Okay.
And they're new to the whole D&D scene, but they're very their personalities are very much.
Are they here today?
No.
Are they in this room?
So how do you? They don't really get along well. They're as people, they're fine, but as characters, they're having a bit of a rough time. How would you get around
I mean,
that?
that's basically been our entire campaign. It's just a constant character clash.
Try to steal stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
Or I used to before I died.
Oh,
yeah.
Was it for stealing stuff?
You have to watch. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
you'll
let's
have
see
to
the
watch
podcast.
It was actually worse than that.
It was actually, yeah,
it was so
worse
much
than
worse.
But I feel a good way to keep characters together is to have a big bad kind of idea. Like, we have our book, and all of our souls were pretty much just bound to it, and we're all going along this quest because of this book. I think otherwise we wouldn't really be together. So having that common goal, just to put them behind it, whether it be through spiritual means or any other thing like that, would definitely be a step in the right direction.
Does that help? I don't know if you're talking like more of an in-game conflicts or out-game conflicts.
It's like they do the quests that they're like supposed to do.
Okay.
It's just they're constantly like infighting and separating.
I mean,
It's yeah.
That's-
It's,
I mean,
what
that's
can you
funny.
do? But
yeah, that's kind of if they choose to lead their characters to
Yeah.
have those internal conflicts.
It's like what can you do?
Yeah, you can always, if you want to try and create dungeons, create situations that they have to work together, and maybe you can, as a DM, kind of guide them with an invisible string to start being friends again,
Yeah.
or at all. That's kind of, I think that's the furthest your invisible hand can reach. You get it. All right.
So, like, correct me or help me, because I'm not very familiar with D&D and whatsoever. So, like, there's got to be a lot of world building involved.
That is.
So, like, what's the craziest thing you've ever had to, like, fight or, like, you know, like wizard, like flying penis monsters? Like what is it?
No magical realm.
You know, you had a fight or
Somebody
the
said
craziest, like
yes.
most absurd shit.
Yeah.
Make models. What's the craziest thing I've thrown at you guys?
I would definitely say
First of all,
the golden neck.
yeah. Oh. Yeah, if you watch the podcast, you'll come up to speed. But I
So you need
created.
a couple hours to just explain it anyway. It's kind of.
I'm not sure. When was that? What hour was that?
Literally the last one.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay. So for their the big Cabal Tower dungeon, I created when they finally got up to the head honcho with his big old hat, and it burst into his throne room. He's sitting on his high horse made of gold. He sunk into it, and a dome enveloped around him, and he became this Cabal mech. That I think it had like a giant concrete hand, and it shot things out of a pot.
Yeah, and then it was controlled by other smaller Cabals.
Yeah,
So it ran on 2 tracks, and at first we thought it was a boiler system because there was a big metal cage in the middle.
Like a furnace.
But then I remember I cracked open one of the treads, and a little Cabal scurried out, and we're like, wait a second, there's no
mechanical parts at all.
There's no mechanical
It's
parts.
a bunch of little red boys just pulling some strings.
Nice.
Basically a giant puppet.
Yeah.
So I guess that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
You can get a die if you'd like.
And will you go to prom with me?
That's where
How about you? How about you, strong man? How about you?
You got a shy hand over there.
I'm not sure if you guys have ever actually like played D&D online or anything, but if you have, do you have a preference for doing D&D online than on Roll20 versus actual tabletop gaming?
I have tried with it for once a different game. I was a player character with Roll20. A couple of my friends here in Tampa now. I'm from Gainesville, but with Tampa friends, and it's a lot more difficult to, in my opinion, to play on Roll20 because with these guys, I have a green colander that I make them put all their phones in, anything to distract them, so I can keep them focused as the DM. On Roll20, you can't do that. You can always open another tab to distract. I always prefer the physical thing. I've got dice here today because I enjoy the tactile element of it. However, I don't think online or in person makes a difference through the story or through how effective a campaign can be. You can have just as fun online as you can in person. If that helps.
Yeah,
Or if I didn't answer your question, you can always say, that's stupid, you're wrong. What's up?
And this is just clear, like as a general question for everybody. Would you believe that? I don't know because you're right, I haven't watched your podcast yet.
Yes.
But that's the key
Piece
word.
of paper? Got paper.
I have several. Would you include elements like props or music or?
Oh, 100%.
But do you think there's a better way? I mean, yeah, I saw the book, but I wasn't sure if the book was just,
this is
actually
prop.
Yeah, and then inside of it, you can
You
open
actually
it.
wrote out the pages.
Every single page,
Yeah.
I try to write in Ozkey's script, and then
this page was given to us folded up in a hat.
Oh, yeah.
so it's got all of the journal entries from Ozkey. So I give the players those things. When we did in the Cabal Tower, any puzzles that were tactical enough for them, I could create and give to them. I did. Any written things, I would give to them. Say they find like an engraving.
It took us 2 hours to solve a puzzle.
It was a really simple puzzle.
Really simple puzzle.
I would always say go the extra mile if you can make a physical prop. Or we used to play music before we started recording everything. We also I unscrewed all the lights in my chandelier except one, so we have kind of a mood lighting thing going. Anything you could do to go the extra mile really helps with the immersion and for a better gameplay experience.
You got rid of the music for your podcast?
Yeah, it does.
Copyright. Yes. It was all scary music. This is scary music.
Yeah, it was scary music.
Cut anything off from this music, so I need to hear it all.
Including Witcher, but.
All right. Both you guys, let's see. Start with Red Shirt closer.
Alrighty,
And then you
big
get
problems after playing D&D for like 8+ years.
Awesome.
Big problem that we have is downtime / short rest and long rest. How do you guys deal with the power of like spellcasters to like let's say warlocks that they get the spells back right away and everything like that compared to like clerics? It's real difficult to balance that whole thing.
Yeah,
How do you guys like doing that?
I mentioned we have a very bastardized version. I'm playing have fun. We play 2nd edition, however, I've adopted elements.
Sure, yeah.
And I bastardized it totally. So we have, I think the only thing that had been relevant, we have a wizard here with the Grom hat, and that's.
You're a 2E wizard?
He's,
Props to you, man.
He jumps.
I mean, something to the stick, like run out of spells immediately.
And he's, every long rest, he gets his spell book back. If he has the time during watch to review his spell book and memorize things for the day, that he's refreshed. And then we have cleric, and this is a new cleric after his old character died. And I believe for these guys, I have them role play, calling to their god. Hey guys, how do I do your spells?
I mean, yeah.
We have many bullets.
I made a metaphor.
Alright, so yeah, he doesn't get the metaphor. So each day we're allotted a certain amount of pistols, which allows us to shoot a spell bullet. But once we shoot that pistol, it's broken and we can't use it again. So that's kind of how we do it.
I only have one pistol.
Yeah, he only has one pistol. I think I have two.
So if anybody else in the audience is having trouble understanding like, second edition cleric spells, maybe that'll help you.
Incredibly archaic. But basically, it's whereas the wizard has to choose their spells while they're memorizing, the cleric has all of their spellbook available, but they can only use so many per day as accordance to their god, which I require them to role play calling too.
I think
Yeah,
it's
what
kind
about
of
the
weird
downside?
to explain.
Let's say growing of a character, like if you guys have like a break or something like that, or so many years, or not years or months or anything like that, do you have any type of formula that you do for like creating like space? Let's say like you want to add an alchemy table.
Ah, okay. So if we're doing like
skills. Yeah, we didn't answer your question at all.
we have not actually. We've kept day to day, but I mean within reason. And you can get a die if you'd like. And then behind, yes.
Alright, mine's kind of specific. I'm running a campaign that's based very specifically on a theme.
Okay.
Greek, Roman, Egyptian.
I dig it.
Alright, so what I'm wondering is, I've been so far keeping the monsters to that theme.
Okay.
But would you say, for the Egyptian part of it, say, make the elves the pharaohs?
I don't see why not.
Yeah.
If you as a DM and as your players feel that's an appropriate substitution or change, then all the power to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about just creating your own world and just developing everything towards that. It's all about having fun. It's the most important part.
I mean,
if you want your elves to be pharaohs, by golly, do it.
if you want them to be short with big hairy feet and live in the Shire, sure those can be elves, man. I don't, whatever. But yeah, it's very bastardized. Very, as long as they're having fun and it makes an inkling of sense, then it's acceptable.
The more important part than it making sense is it being consistent.
Yeah, that's the most.
What are the dwarves?
You give us the dice. And if you would like a dice, you can have them. Doing this again. All right.
Trying this.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Wow.
Lost.
I'm an athlete. Yeah. I keep like drifting to the right.
Drifting.
All the way to the right. I'm sorry.
All right.
I am sorry about that.
Big cat.
Let it roll, let it roll.
It's right there underneath pressure.
We got another die if you'd like.
Yeah, we have plenty. We have plenty.
Yes.
Did I really call?
Good.
As a DM, you do a lot of improv, but how much pre-planning do you usually do before each session?
I have several notebooks. I always keep a little moleskin journal on me so I can write down ideas and flesh it out. But essentially, bare bones. You create the skeleton of what you generally want, and then as you play with your players, they kind of add the meat onto it to flesh it out more. So, for example, I had the trapped kobold tower, and I had a series of rooms that I wanted them to, or that I thought would be fun to explore. And then depending on how they performed in the previous room, I would change the next room. For example, there's a puzzle room they went in. It should have taken 10 minutes at most, and it took them 2 straight hours. So I think I had 1 or 2 puzzles I could have included past that, and I nixed them because they were done with puzzles by that point. Yeah. But so just a general thing, you want players to go from this area to this area to this area, provide them opportunities and abilities too. If they decide to go on horseback rather than on boat, that's acceptable. It's all up to them. Have fun. You can get a die if you like.
I gotta ask, what was the puzzle that took 2 straight hours?
Would you like to tell, guys?
Alright, so there was a Zoltar box. And there was a little genie sitting in the box.
It wasn't a genie,
it was a dragon.
It was a yellow dragon.
Yellow dragon. It was a silver and gold dragon. And so it said, it popped up a piece of paper and said, like, you know, ask me any question and I will give you an answer. And
And by the way, he actually would write it on a post-it
so we
note
wrote
and
it on a
hand it
post-it
to
note.
us. And then we'd have to write a question on the post-it note and hand it back to him. So it was awful for a podcast.
Yeah.
It was to cut most of it out entirely.
I'm never doing this again.
But, I mean,
yeah, so my character had just had his brain screwed with and now thought of kobolds as like exactly the same as he was, and so he said, yeah, that's what he. Yeah, no,
missed that too.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was such.
it was good role playing that it tells us that.
Yeah, but
Hello.
But so yeah, no, so I saw this goddess of the kobolds, and I was like, ooh, I need to find some sort of like, you know, higher relevation from her. So I'm like asking her like philosophical questions, and he thinks it's a logic puzzle, and so he's trying to brute force the logic.
Well, what happened
I'll
is
see
it
what's
was
the
this Zoltar box with a, I guess it was silver and white
Gold.
dragon spouted around, and it was when they entered the room, a piece of paper extended from, you know, a little slit that said, "Ask me any question, and I will respond. Tell me
why.
Tell me why, and I'll let you pass." And then, so they'd ask any question, and then they would be returned an answer, and either the left or the right eye of this dragon would be illuminated. And the puzzle was, whatever the first character was, I believe the first character of the...
Yeah, the first letter.
Yeah, the first letter of their prompt would be, I think it was, if it was an odd number letter.
No, it was the first half of the alphabet and the second half of the
if it was the first half of the alphabet, the left eye would illuminate. If it was the last half, the right eye would illuminate. And it took 2 hours to realize that.
Yeah.
I thought it was like I would have to. I thought it was like this clever logic
Yeah,
thing where I'd have to like pen
you just
the
told her that-
perfect
you just
question
realized
that would
that's what's happening.
like that would give me the exact answer I need to cross through, and it turned out it was just like an alphabet thing.
Yeah, my old character, who has died, was severely depressed and kept asking very bad questions, which we are glad they were cut.
Yeah.
All right, let's go on a third die, man. This probably got it. All right, I'm gonna go with these two in the back. You go at the same time because you're in the same group. You guess.
Mine is more of a story than a question.
All right.
Yeah.
But it's I can one up.
Oh boy! That's not a good thing.
I
That's
can
like.
one up. So my players were fighting this vampire. She was in this big tower. They finally killed her. They didn't use radiant damage to kill her, and I'm playing 5e. So they didn't use radiant damage to kill her, so she just went back to her coffin.
Right.
And they knew that would happen. So, and first of all, there were 2 groups. There was one group that was like, we're going to teleport to the coffin. The second group was like, we're going to try to find the coffin. The first group who tried to teleport to the coffin rolled really badly on the teleportation roll, ended up somewhere completely different. Second half of the group, there was a throne. Underneath the throne was a passageway that led down to the coffin. But there was a door. Well, it was a wall, and then they realized it was a door afterwards. And so they had to dispel the illusion magic that covered up the riddle. And there was a riddle where basically the answer to the riddle was your shadow. So the answer to the puzzle was that you had to put your shadow on the door by using like natural light. My players sat there for 4 hours.
Oh my god.
And still couldn't figure out the puzzle. Had to go upstairs, get an NPC to come down and help them. Just to figure out, oh, it's dark. Maybe we should put a shadow.
It's always the simple answers get you.
4 hours.
I'm not gonna lie, you actually reminded me of a campaign we played with one of my best friends, and he gave us a really simple puzzle. But me and my other friends were like all meatheads. We don't really give a like, how you do this? Like, so it was a room full of candles, right? And there was shadows. There was 6 players, but there were 7 shadows. We were like, okay, 7th shadow. Me and my friend were like, attack the shadows. So we're like banging on the wall with our swords and shit. Like, it doesn't seem to be doing any damage, but keep attacking. Roll higher. Roll higher. So we kept attacking the shadow. Eventually she goes through and she's like, She just puts out all the candles except for one and puts her shadow on the other shadow, the damn door opens, and we're like, I think I should have stabbed it a little harder. And we're like rolling zeros on intelligence checks and fucking stupid.
Everybody's having trouble with shadows, huh?
Yeah, it seems to be shadows.
Shadows.
Do you have a question?
Oh yeah, can a ring of spells storing bypass restrictions on racial trait spellcaster?
Honestly, that kind of like figuring out inconsistencies in the rules like that, or not inconsistencies, but like exceptions, like that's really a DM by DM.
That's based off of DM.
Yeah, so it's like really, it's yeah.
So you could, as a DM, you could either increase the racial tensions just to make everything provocative.
Or, personally, I think it'd be hilarious if like a
So we
dwarf
could have
or
a
gnome stepped up and
dictatorship.
just released a fireball and ring at me.
Anyway, like that. I'm not gonna throw it outside.
Hello.
Hi. So what races do you like to play?
I've always been like very attracted to like that. Towards the elf, half elf kind of deal.
Very attracted to the elves and half elves.
Yeah. So naturally, I play an elf or a half elf, and I just like having night vision of 20 years. So that's all. That's all.
I usually play humans. One time I do like Eberron, and I like to play Wolfforge, which are basically magical robot golems. Yeah, and they're really cool. I really like the flavor of them. But you know, most settings don't have them, so I usually just play human.
I just mainly play human. I'm not creative, really. I'm not gonna come out with a good, interesting role character, so it's kind of close to myself, but like funny family guys.
Dead orange. Do it again.
Yes, you. Check your shirt.
He did it like she did it 9 times. Each time she had like 3 dice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he does it anyway.
But he does it anyway. My cheat code is chaotic neutral characters do whatever they want. My friend here, his recent character that has passed, God bless his soul, had an experience playing a character that was finally outside of that. Tell him how that went. Just playing your character, how bad?
Well, in actual, like, what I like to do is that a character that I normally play is very for the greater good kind of deal, but this character that I played, Tonsil, he was very, very selfish, and he wanted everything for himself. He could just do everything that he could to better his own way, and I actually stopped liking how his character direction was going. So I kind of talked with our good DM here to find out a way to introduce a new character for me to play. But what was the question? How do I just keep to it?
How do you keep it? Well, I mean, I would say that like nowadays, alignment really doesn't mean too much about your character. It used to be, you know, a pretty core part of the game, but nowadays it's more just like your hair color or your eye color, and it's something you think about when you're creating your character that kind of guides that character creation.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to do something that isn't strictly within your alignment.
If the character you made, like, if the guy you're trying to roleplay the character, like, that's the decision you know they would make, doesn't, I guess it wouldn't,
Yeah,
that would override,
even if you're a lawful
alignment.
good character, that doesn't mean you can't do something selfish in once, you know, just because.
That's fun.
Kind of difficult.
Well,
yeah, at that point, it's just, you know, you gotta be respectful of the other people in the party.
right,
of course, if you play your
character come around or something, so they realize the error of their ways and become chaotic.
Become better people now.
And your alignment can always change later in the campaign. If they find out they're really not good at this, their character can undergo kind of a transformative process to change their alignment.
If you would like it, guy.
And I saw you. Yeah, you got it. You're next.
So this is 2 parts in case, because, you know, this one you're responsible for the last one, so in case you don't have to answer this one, have you played a lawful evil character, for example, how did you do it? If you haven't, how do you balance, there's a really big dichotomy between making your character for role-playing purposes and making your character for, like, quote-unquote, min-maxing purposes? What do you guys prefer to do, you know, in terms of just making one and optimization, and what do you see as optimization?
Yeah, I have not experienced with the lawful.
I played as a lawful neutral character that wasn't afraid to do bad things, and I think really I think the important part is, you know, you either need to be playing an evil party, and because then evil people can work together pretty easily, or you know, you need to have them more focused on the lawful side than the evil side. Like, you know, you can be a selfish person, but as long as you know you're following the law, you're making sure everything's above board, you can still get along with other law-abiding characters. And what was the second part of the question?
Just the dichotomy between, like, say, min-maxing and, like, playing, like, making a character that isn't necessarily optimized for.
I mean, I think that's really a DM by DM thing, because some DMs will play dungeon crawls where you're just rolling dice and, you know, doing tactical combat. And if you bother to make a nice fleshed out character for that, you're gonna kind of end up having wasted some time talking and that sort of stuff. Then it's a little bit more like if you just have a character who can fight in combat. Like my dad plays, and he has a really badass ranger who he's a gloomstalker, and he can kill 3 things in the first round of combat. But he's not any good in talking to people because he's just a kind of a somber, quiet, you know.
He's a murder hobo.
Yeah, a little bit.
Down the line here, what's your favorite episode of Family Guy?
Alright, we're going to skip the Family Guy.
I've never seen.
We'll just give you the dice right away. I thought we're going to skip the what is your favorite Family Guy episode question. Yeah, Spider-Man. Spider-Woman.
What was the one thing that got you really to stick with D&D? Like, what is the one thing that's like, the one thing that's like, this is something that I want to stick with for a really long time?
So, like, what attracted us to playing Dungeons and Dragons for the past of my life?
Not something that got you into it, but got you to stick with it. If that makes any sense.
I mean, so you said a little early that was kind of the idea that you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, because I've never really played a game. I'm normally a video game type of guy, so you're always like kind of bound by these rules and limitations, but just the fact that you can do whatever you want outside of boundaries and whatnot, and just work with your DM to create this world together is like probably the most fun part that I find with it, and also just always the chance with the die. That I always find that exhilarating. Like, am I gonna do well, or am I gonna do terribly?
That's what up.
Yeah. Am I gonna do this amazing thing, or am I going to fall off a tower and pay the consequences?
That was close. Yeah.
Is that close to what you asked for? We look for like examples.
Yeah.
More of like, I just think like the, I don't know.
Like,
just
do you want an
experience that you have?
Okay.
A specific experience.
Yeah, like an example.
I started with my old brother-in-law. He was the one that taught me how to play. He gave me all the old 2nd edition material, and it was just because we went to a board or comic book store before, and he bought me a little figurine of a dog. And my entire campaign, I played for like 2 years, and I wanted to get this magical statue of a dog, and I say an incantation, and he comes forth. And I finally, after 2 years of grinding for it, finally found, located, and was able to use this with the power word. And then went on a whole experience where I was really happy that I got him. So I hugged him, and then he was banished back to his realm, and I was still like attached to him. So I was transported to the astral realm on my own. And it was a whole big ordeal trying to get back to where I was, and my party didn't know where I was, thought I was dead. And one of the first things I did in D&D, so that's what kept me kind of coming back. And I DM'd because I want to give people that same kind of funny, engaging experience that I had.
How long ago was that? Like,
oh gosh, that was 7, 8, 9?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
I was there too.
Do you guys have any super memorable experiences?
I remember, like just the characters, because the first time I ever played, I was the DM.
That's how it is. That's how it be.
Yeah. And so, like, just making the characters, and like, there's like my friend. I was talking to him the other day, and he still remembers one of the villains I had. He was a warforged under the Jack of Blades, and so all of the Jack of Blades lieutenants were named after blades, and so he was Kukri, and like he loved screaming his name. I am Kukri, and like it was just like the knife. Yeah, and he just, like he still remembers that guy, like he still remembers that scream, and like just kind of like the memorable characters that come out of it. That's what really sells it for me.
Is that right?
You can talk about it.
I really like the one villain, Gary. Yeah. No, that was a legitimate rivalry because I was doing a campaign. He was DMing.
Oh,
we had a friend, and it was a friend of ours, and his character's name was Gildor, and he had the title Gildor the Great. And then we had this rival guy just named Gary, who was just this random jerk. Who, like, we just found him, and like, I don't know, we had like one run-in with him, and we just thought we'd never see him again. And then later, after doing some quests, we came back into town and everybody was talking about this great guy named Gary the Great. And it's this, and it was just this whole thing where we're chasing after this guy named Gary.
He's this Gary who heard of our other player, Gildor the Great. He's like, I like that title.
Yeah,
so he stole it.
Stole a title.
So he became Gary the Great, and that's what everyone knew him by, and they were just really
he
upset by
took
that.
the nickname from him. And we're like, I mean, he also killed one of our friends, but
It's a little big.
Great. But yeah, so he was the main villain, mainly the friend killing, but it's like it was just cherry on top was just stealing a nickname. Just
Yeah, you don't do that. And if you want to die, you can.
I'm not throwing anything further than the first row.
All right, I got it. Right here.
Me?
Behind you.
In our current campaign, we have 2 lawful good characters, and
Wow.
my boss, my DM, he wants to keep them really lawful good, so we have to do everything like that. But most of our characters, their answer is, I'm going to chop them up and put them in a stew.
Naturally.
That's specifically one guy. He literally says, let's put him in a stew.
Why let it go to waste?
But if he does that, does
Alive.
anything like towards that area, or if we throw an NPC towards schools or something like that, the paladin and cleric lose their powers entirely, and they can't use their magical weapons at all.
Because we didn't stop them.
That's, I mean, I feel like I DM that the same way. If a lawful good character has the ability to prevent something that would go strictly against being lawful or good, then that's erring on the side of, passing a blind eye. They start to stray towards not lawful good.
It's not that, it's just how do we get the other part of the party to realize that we do need our healers to survive.
I've kept this entire
dungeon.
party alive.
Excellent.
I've died twice.
Oh.
I've died literally twice. My DM's just like, God says you're alive. Like, I literally sacrificed myself.
And that's another thing where like you need to communicate with the other players and like iron out the expectations, because if there's this expectation of like if you're not playing lawful good, then your healers are going to lose their powers. That's pretty big, and like, if they're not on board with that, maybe something needs to change.
The only person who wouldn't get on board with that would be Frankie, because he's a werewolf, so he heals naturally. So he's like, I don't need healers. Everybody else is like, oh, we do.
Alright. And I think it's already 47. I think we've got to clear out by 50. So we got like one more question or 2 quick ones. So I'm going to start with you, because you didn't.
Have you had any hilarious critical fails?
Oh, yeah.
Is that why you call it Howard?
No, but I've been beat up by you two many times.
So we knocked him out just from critically failing and hitting him.
Yeah. Like 3 separate instances of combat.
That was one
knocked
sitting
out.
too.
Well, he's taken more damage from friends than by foes.
Yeah.
Oh, and then he had to kind of like Deus Ex Machina in like a health potion. And I didn't catch on, so I just was like, we're not gonna drink a random potion.
There was like, we find a small red potion. Why would there be a red potion in a dungeon?
Probably
We're not gonna
poison.
touch that.
Probably poison. Come on, let's get out of here.
I thought he was just role playing, but he actually didn't get it.
Who else?
You can't do that again.
I don't know you.
Alright, Stranger.
I really want to get into D&D.
Yeah?
And like I've started like at least 7 or 8 campaigns, but we've never gone past like an hour of it. Am I a lost cause? Like, should I like, how do you recommend
She's
that?
nice. If every campaign you've been has only gone for an hour, maybe you're the weakling.
Oh, harsh round.
It is a harsh round.
If you like it, dice.
You should pick 2.
One that you can only
Obviously, I
use for
don't
an
need
hour.
it.
Right behind.
In 5e, is mixing races allowed?
In 5e?
What's the world your DM has set up?
Is it
you wanna know?
Is there an
It's
anti-nation
a
law
bit,
or
bit racist.
Hey man.
Honestly, it's about having fun. It mixes
It
many
is
races
about
as
having
long
fun.
as it's
So
But the
talk to
mindset
DM.
that he has is abuse for his fellow subordinates. So.
I see. Well, if you guys enjoy it, then you're having fun.
Yeah.
He likes to make these interesting races, like the suffering African with the.
Okay.
This is PG-13.
If you'd like to dice, you can have it. Let's do a quick shot question. We got one. Let's go.
We got one last question.
Back first. I saw it first.
Yeah.
That's you. Point.
Any other games that you're interested in as far as tabletop? Like-
Cyclades.
Like,
I'm sorry. As far as dice role playing,
Yeah, anything.
I have no experience in anything else.
What's your favorite version of D&D? Which edition?
Second or fifth. That's why I kind of blended the two. So my own brew. I homebrew, you know?
Did you have a question in the back? All right.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being a great audience.